Imagine this. It's a Friday night. Your phone lights up. Group chats buzzing, invitations stacking, plans being made somewhere without you. From the outside, this looks like life happening. Movement, belonging. And yet, you don't feel pulled toward it. You look at the screen for a few seconds longer than necessary. Not because you're busy, not because you're anxious, but because a quiet resistance rises inside you. Something subtle, a heaviness that isn't sadness, a boredom that feels more like fatigue of the soul. So you turn the phone face down. You tell yourself you're tired, that you'll go next time, that you've outgrown certain scenes, that you enjoy your own company now. And maybe all of that is true. But beneath those explanations, there's a question you rarely let yourself hear. Why do some of the most intelligent, perceptive people slowly withdraw from social life, without drama, without conflict, without explanation? They don't announce it. They don't burn bridges. They don't claim to be better than anyone else. They just disappear a little. At first, it looks like growth, like discernment, like boundaries. You stop forcing yourself into conversations that feel repetitive. You stop explaining things that no one is really listening to. You stop performing interest where none is returned. And it feels like relief. But over time, something strange happens. The world feels louder. Conversations feel thinner. Small talk feels almost physically uncomfortable. Even people you once loved seem slightly out of sync with you, like you're hearing the same song but at a different tempo. And the most confusing part? You're not unhappy. You're functional, productive, thoughtful, maybe even calmer than before. So why does it feel like something essential is quietly fading? Here's the paradox most people never examine. If humans are wired for connection, why do some of the smartest minds feel most at peace when they are alone? Is this withdrawal wisdom? Or is it a subtle form of emotional self-protection disguised as insight? Because there is a difference, an important one, between choosing solitude and drifting into isolation. And from the inside, they feel almost identical. You didn't stop socializing because you hate people. You didn't withdraw because you're incapable of connection. In fact, it might be the opposite. You see too much. You notice the unspoken tensions, the performative empathy, the invisible power games, the way conversations orbit status, validation, or distraction rather than truth. You hear what people say and what they carefully avoid saying. And once you see that, it becomes difficult to unsee it. So you begin to filter, then to limit, then to retreat. Not out of arrogance, but out of exhaustion. But here's where the real question begins to form. Are you stepping back because you're evolving beyond shallow connection, or because you no longer feel safe being fully seen? That line is thin, and almost no one talks about it. Because withdrawal feels clean, rational, defensible. You can justify it with logic. I value depth. I protect my energy. I don't enjoy meaningless conversations. All of which may be true. But logic has a way of laundering emotional wounds into intellectual conclusions. And the danger isn't that you become alone. The danger is that you slowly convince yourself you don't need anyone. History is full of brilliant minds who withdrew, philosophers, writers, thinkers who stepped away from society to see it more clearly. Nietzsche walked alone. Schopenhauer distrusted companionship. Jung warned that individuation often requires separation from the collective, but none of them claimed withdrawal was harmless. Because isolation sharpens perception, but it can also harden the heart. Withdrawal doesn't happen all at once. It happens in layers. At first, it's selective. You skip gatherings that feel hollow. You choose silence over explanation. You stop spending energy where there's no resonance, and it feels healthy. But beneath that choice, something deeper is unfolding. Intelligence doesn't just make you think faster, it makes you notice patterns earlier. You begin to see that much of social life runs on unconscious agreements about what can be said, what must be softened, what emotions are welcome, and which ones are quietly discouraged. Carl Jung called this the collective persona, the mask society wears to function. And the more conscious you become, the harder it is to keep wearing that mask without friction. You feel it in your body. A tightening when small talk drags on. A subtle irritation when conversations circle ego rather than meaning. A sense of inner dissonance when you're expected to react instead of reflect. So you pull back. Not because you lack social skill, but because you're over-aware of the cost. Jung believed individuation requires separation from the collective. You must step outside the group to hear your own signal clearly. And many intelligent people do exactly that. They step back to think, to observe, to integrate. But individuation has a shadow. Because when you separate from the collective, you also lose the unconscious safety that comes with belonging. You're no longer carried by shared assumptions, no longer buffered by group momentum. You're alone with your perceptions. Nietzsche understood this well. To see clearly is not liberating at first, it's destabilizing. You lose the warmth of consensus before you gain the strength of self-trust. And for sensitive, intelligent minds, this destabilization rewires how you relate to others. Social life begins to feel like drain instead of nourishment, noise instead of resonance, performance instead of presence. So withdrawal becomes adaptive. But adaptation is not resolution. Schopenhauer believed distance reduced suffering. And in many ways he was right. Less attachment means fewer disappointments. But distance also reduces aliveness. Because connection doesn't just expose you to pain. It exposes you to unpredictability, to mirrors you didn't choose, to parts of yourself you cannot fully access alone. Psychology explains another layer. Highly intelligent people often rely on cognition to regulate emotion. You analyze, contextualize, understand. Insight becomes a buffer. You don't get as angry because you see causes. You don't get as attached because you anticipate outcomes. You don't get as hurt because you stay one step removed. But emotional safety purchased this way comes at a price. Over time, distance becomes default. You feel most yourself when unobserved, when nothing is expected of you, when your inner world doesn't need translation. Solitude starts to feel cleaner than connection. But notice the shift. You didn't withdraw because people were shallow. You withdrew because being fully present started to feel risky. Risky to your energy, risky to your clarity, risky to the inner order you've built. Withdrawal, at its core, is often not about superiority. It's about control. When you're alone, you control the tempo, the depth, the silence. And if you've been misunderstood deeply enough times, retreat becomes self-preservation. But the loop tightens. The more you withdraw, the less tolerance you have for friction. The less tolerance you have, the more justified withdrawal feels. And quietly, something fades. Spontaneity, emotional elasticity, the ability to be surprised by others. You become calm but rigid, clear but insulated. Life feels orderly but flatter. The consequences don't arrive loudly. Your life may even improve on the surface. More focus, less noise, more efficiency. But what's lost is not productivity. It's range. Without regular, unpredictable human contact, your emotional system stabilizes, but at a lower amplitude. Joy softens. Curiosity dulls. Intensity feels like disturbance. You're not depressed. You're just less moved. And so you curate harder. You choose environments that confirm your inner order. You engage with ideas instead of people. You live increasingly behind glass. From the outside, it looks like wisdom. From the inside, it feels like peace. But peace built on disconnection is fragile. Zoom out further. When reflective, intelligent people disengage quietly, society changes. Nuance disappears. Extremes dominate, not because they're wiser, but because they remain in the room. Those most capable of complexity leave the conversation. On a personal level, destiny bends subtly. Opportunities requiring relational risk pass by. Creative collaborations never form. Love remains hypothetical rather than lived. You don't experience dramatic loss. You experience missed emergence. Versions of yourself that only appear in relationship never fully arrive. Because some aspects of identity are forged through friction, through disagreement, misunderstanding, repair. Existential philosophers understood this. Martin Buber distinguished between relating to others as objects and meeting them as presences that transform you. Withdrawal pushes you toward observation instead of encounter, and meaning does not arise from safety alone. It arises from engagement with uncertainty. Which brings us to the turning point. The rebellion does not mean forcing yourself back into social life. It does not mean becoming more extroverted, more agreeable, more normal. Withdrawal was a response, not the problem. The rebellion begins when you question the belief that retreat is the only way to stay intact. You didn't withdraw because you hate people. You withdrew because you were tired of being fragmented. So the question changes. Not, how do I tolerate people again? But, under what conditions do I come alive with others? The answer is not more people. It's better context, selective re-engagement. Not re-entry into the crowd, but intentional return. History shows this rhythm again and again. Retreat, then return. Jung returned. Nietzsche warned against freezing in the cave. Even monks practiced solitude in rhythm with community.
The mistake is not stepping back. The mistake is never stepping forward again. Return does not mean performing. It means presence. You stop rescuing conversations from discomfort. You allow silence. You stop compressing your depth. You let the wrong connections fall away faster and give space for the right ones to appear. You stop using intelligence as armor. Insight becomes bridge, not wall. You choose where to engage, where to step back, consciously. This builds something new, emotional elasticity. The ability to remain yourself in contact, not fusion, not isolation, differentiation. You are distinct and in relation. And here is the final truth, the one that reframes everything. Withdrawal was never your mistake. It was your threshold. You withdrew because the way connection was offered required self-betrayal. So you chose coherence. That was intelligent. But withdrawal is a phase, not a destination. The moment it becomes identity, it hardens into a cage, clean, rational, defensible. The most dangerous cages are the ones you can justify. You were never meant to choose between depth and connection. You were meant to carry depth into connection. The final maturation is not disappearance. It is return, on your own terms. With fewer relationships, but truer ones. With more silence, but shared silence. With depth that no longer hides, but invites. Wisdom sharpens in solitude. Meaning forms in relation. If your life feels calm but slightly hollow,
ordered but emotionally quiet, ask yourself this gently: am I resting or am I hiding? Because rest restores you. Hiding slowly shrinks you. The goal was never to leave the world. It was to meet it without leaving yourself. That is the final threshold. And crossing it doesn't make life louder. It makes it truer.